Nobody has ever asked me what I believe work is for. And I never thought to ask myself this either. I just started working, right? And kept going at it for years and years and years, like so many of us do. So I want to ask you something that I think most people never stop to consider. And that question is, what is your work philosophy? Not what you do, not where you work, but what do you actually believe work is for? And what role do you think work is supposed to play in your life? And what are you expecting work to give you? Because I think that most of us have a work philosophy, but we're just not aware of it. And when you're not aware of something, you can't question it, and it makes it harder to make a change in that area of your life. You essentially just keep living inside of it. You keep executing on it. You keep letting it run things quietly in the background. And that is exactly what I did for years. When I think about my work philosophy, it was inherited, and I think that this is common for many people. Our beliefs, thoughts, relationship with work is highly influenced by the environment that we grew up in, by our upbringing, by how we saw people closest to us engage with work. And growing up as a child of immigrants, the work philosophy that I absorbed was very specific. It was along the lines of work being for survival. Work is for stability. A good job is one that pays well, that provides security, that gives you a solid foundation to stand on. And whether you enjoy that work is secondary. In fact, if you enjoy it, that is a luxury. Whether it fulfills you is beside the point. Happiness isn't found in work. Happiness is found in the safety and the security that work brings. So, with that philosophy in mind, for years I chose jobs like you would choose a tool, right? Is it reliable? Does it pay well? Does it offer security? Great. Check, check, check. That's a good job, Deanna. Go for it. All right. And that is the cycle that I was in for years. And I think from the outside looking in, everything looks great, right? I worked hard, I delivered, I I showed up day in and day out. And from the outside looking in, it looked great, but inside I was miserable. And I would describe that feeling as like a low grade fever of sorts. Just each day thinking I'm doing everything right, but why do I feel this sense of emptiness? Why am I spending a majority of my waking hours in service of something that I don't connect with and that doesn't actually matter to me? And I think what's really important to chat about as well in this conversation is the identity piece, because when work is the center of your life, when work is where your worth lives and where your identity lives, you don't just have a job. You are the job, right? And that might feel fine when things are going well in that area, but when the job changes, when you leave the job, if you get let go, if you burn out, or if you just wake up one day and realize this isn't something that I care about, that's when it no longer feels fine, because you're faced with that question of, okay, who am I? And it can be really uncomfortable if you don't have an answer, right? Because if your identity is intertwined with what you produce, it's really tough when you take that thing away to get clear on, well, what do I actually want? What actually matters to me? And who am I outside of the things that I do and the things that I produce? So what I've landed on is I work to live, not the other way around. Work is a gateway for me. It unlocks experiences that add to the richness of my life, experiences like travel. But beyond that, the richness and the fullness that I get from life comes from my relationships, the freedom I that makes life feel worth waking up for. Um, the richness of life for me comes from the ability to move through my days with some degree of intention as opposed to obligation. Um, and those are the things that make life feel like something. It's not about work, right? Work is not the point, but good aligned work is a way that I can tap into that fullness and richness of life. But at the end of the day, my value as a human is not determined by how much I produce or how hard I push or how impressive my resume looks. And this is what I'm unlearning. So I want to also be very clear that I understand not everyone is in a position to make work secondary. With the society that we live in, bills are real, responsibilities are real. And I think that there are some seasons that will genuinely require you to prioritize stability above everything else. So I don't want to gloss over that. But I think that there's a difference, and it's important to make this distinction because there's a difference between choosing to prioritize stability because your season requires it and then living inside a work philosophy that you're not even aware of and that you have never actually examined. One is a conscious choice and the other is just default. And when we're living and operating from default, it can be really sneaky and really scary because it feels like this is just how things are, right? But operating from that space means that, right, you're on autopilot and you've never actually taken the time to think about what is true to you and what's right for you. And that can contribute to this feeling of, well, I'm doing everything right, but I still feel off, right? So that feeling is worth paying attention to. So I want to bring us back to the question I started off with. What is your work philosophy? And again, not the one that you inherited, not the one that looks good on paper, not the one that made sense given where you came from, even if it is valid and understandable. But I want to know, what is your true work philosophy in this season of your life? Do you work to live or are you living to work? And is that something that is a conscious choice or is it something that you fell into and you've just kept going with it, right? What do you believe work is actually for? And the way that you're currently spending your time and energy, is that aligned with what's important to you? Because again, I think a lot of us are running on these inherited work philosophies that we never chose and that we never questioned. And I think that a lot of us feel it, that exhaustion, that emptiness, and that quiet sense of something is off, even when everything looks great from the outside. So I'm not saying to just, go blow up your life. I'm not saying quit your job and stop caring about stability and, follow your passion off a cliff. I'm just saying know what it is that you believe.